Many consider it to be one of the greatest humanitarian events in history. During the Berlin Airlift, over 2 million people depended on food and supplies delivered by airplanes flown by the U.S. and other Western Allied countries. The airlift allowed the Western Allies to hold Berlin, keeping it from Soviet control. Now, 70 years later, the Berlin Airlift Historical Foundation is telling the story of the airlift with their C-54, the military version of a DC-4.
Well, our mission is to preserve the history of the Great Berlin Airlift that took place in 1948 and 1949. It was such a great story. First time in history an airlift of this magnitude had been tried. But the goal was Berlin blockaded by the Russians, how to sustain 2.5 million people without a shooting conflict.
This C-54 is a flying museum with pictures and artifacts about the airlift.
Well, ever since a small boy, I just fell in love with the Douglas C-54 transport, and as I got older and realized what it had done in this humanitarian effort, just always intrigued me. And I noticed that not many people were aware of the story. So as time went on, I thought how neat it would be to have an educational exhibit inside of a flyable C-54. And that's how this all began.
While the C-47 or DC-3 started the airlift, larger airplanes like the C-54 carried much of the cargo.
So the call went out through the military all around the world to bring in Douglas C-54s that were now being assigned for the Berlin Airlift. It could carry 20,000 pounds.
The Berlin Airlift Historical Foundation wants to continue to teach important history using airplanes. The foundation is adding the only airworthy C-97 to the fleet. The C-97 is the cargo version of the B-29.
We would like to continue our story of history by going into the Cold War era. So the C-97 is perfect for that. It was in operation that whole time, beginning with the airlift and ending in 1989 when the Berlin Wall came down. So we're going to install not only where the airlift left off, but we've got Korea, we've got Vietnam, we've got the entire Cold War spectrum.
The men and women who keep these old airplanes flying are passionate about telling the story of the airlift so the public can remember the lessons learned in Berlin so many years ago.
We're fighting the Germans. Next thing, we're trying to save them. So it's a perfect example how people coming together can accomplish great things.
Josh Cochran, AOPA Live.